So after a long day of taking care of everybody else, the kids are finally asleep, the house is quiet, and all I want to do is eat. Before I know it, I'm wandering into my kitchen, rummaging through the fridge, eating snacks or sneaking snacks in the pantry, telling myself just one more bite. But before I know it, I'm getting to the bottom of the bag. I'm eating into a place where I actually feel sick. And then that's when the guilt actually starts to sink in. And if you can relate to this, I want you to know two things. Number one, you are not alone. Number two, this is not your fault. This is not about having more discipline or not having enough willpower. There are actually reasons behind this. And that is something I want to talk to you about in this video today. So for years struggling with this, I used to just believe that if I had more discipline or more willpower, I wouldn't end up binging at night. But after struggling with this for years, I realized that it was actually not just about discipline, that there was something deeper. And as a mom with a history of an eating disorder, I realized that I had to address this and get to the root of what was going on because I didn't want this to become something more problematic or something that my kids would end up watching or seeing me do as they grew up. And so that is something that I'm hoping to talk to you about today in this video. Why is it that moms might have the tendency to binge eat at night? And how can you finally stop this behavior from happening? So first, let's talk about why is this happening? Well, most moms don't realize that they're actually restricting their intake all day long. And you may not realize that that's what's happening, but it might start out as skipping breakfast, or you are eating bites off of your kids' plates, or maybe just eating leftovers while you're feeding your kids, but never actually sitting down and eating a full meal and feeling satiated during the day. This can be problematic, and this is something that easily happens to us as moms, whether intentionally or not. There might also be ingrained food rules that are still kind of stuck there in the back of your brain and governing how you eat or making you feel guilty for eating. Or maybe you feel like I've eaten too many carbs or I shouldn't be eating too much sugar. Like all those old food rules that maybe have haunted us from the past are coming back into full play. And again, we may not even realize that that's what's happening. And you might feel guilty, like, oh, I didn't get my workout in today. I shouldn't be eating that, or I'm eating too much, or I shouldn't be eating too many calories. Or maybe you're wearing some kind of device that's telling you how many calories you've eaten or how many steps you've taken. And that's metrics that you're constantly tracking all day long, making you feel like you shouldn't eat. The problem is when we get to the end of the day and the responsibilities of the days are done, distractions have kind of come to an end, things are slowing down, you might all of a sudden get hit with this overwhelming drive to eat. And that is a biological urge that our body is giving us, telling us, look, you haven't gotten enough to eat, you need to eat more. And that is where we can suddenly get this urge to eat at the end of the day when all is said and done and we're sitting down and we're realizing I'm starving. The other thing is that you might be using food as a way to decompress or comfort yourself or alleviate the stresses at the end of the day, which, by the way, is totally understandable and relatable. There is no judgment or shame at all. But all of this can kind of come together to create the perfect storm, which makes binge eating something that a lot of us may fall into as moms at the end of the day. The good news is that this is a cycle that you can break. And I want to give you 3 ways in which you can start to apply this in your life if binge eating is something that you're struggling with as a mom. And step number 1, it may seem obvious, but to a lot of us, it's not. And that is to eat more and to eat regularly and more frequently throughout the day. Again, as moms, because we're so busy taking care of our kids and taking care of everyone else, we often put our own basic needs to the back burner. And this is the number one thing that I see with the moms that I work with is that they're simply not getting enough to eat. And so making it a priority to nourish your body and eat regularly and consistently throughout the day can ensure that your body is getting enough and adequate amount of foods so that you're not getting to the end of the day in this overdrive of this biological need. I have to eat a ton right now to make up for everything you didn't get in the day. So really making sure to address our biological need for food and eating enough. And this can be challenging, especially if you might be dealing with disordered eating, or if you're struggling with, those ingrained food rules that are making it challenging to give yourself permission to eat, but making sure that you're making it a priority to eat regularly can really help decrease the urges to binge at night. The second tip here is to give yourself permission to eat at night instead of feeling like I'm a rebel or I'm doing something wrong for eating at night. The minute that we tell ourselves, I shouldn't eat that, I shouldn't eat this, when we start to make foods off limits, they actually become more desirable. It's like the forbidden fruit. We are naturally inclined as humans to focus on and become preoccupied with the things that we tell ourselves that we can't eat during the day. So if this is something that you're struggling with, really consider what are the foods that you find yourself gravitating towards, and how can you give yourself unconditional permission to eat those things, to incorporate them, rather than feeling like I have to avoid them. And now you're in this internal tug of war with yourself. Really, a lot of binge eating is not just physically under eating, but also mentally restricting and denying ourselves access to the things that we want. Again, this is where those ingrained food rules really come into play. And so when you can look at this as, I'm going to give myself permission, unconditional permission to eat the things that I'm desiring, and you're taking them off the pedestal and making them accessible, that will help break that mental restriction that you might be struggling with, that might also be feeding those binge eating urges. Last tip here is to really find things that you can do at night that also bring you pleasure, that don't just have to do with food. Hear me out. There is nothing wrong with eating for comfort and for emotional reasons. Eating and food are inherently comforting. We just don't want eating to be the only tool in our toolbox. And sometimes as moms, eating does feel like the only thing that we have access to that does feel pleasurable, or that is a form of self-care. And eating is the most valid form of self-care. You never have to justify that. And I also just want to encourage you to think about what are other pleasurable things that you can do to build into your life, maybe even at nighttime. And especially as moms, we often lose access to the things that we once used to engage in, activities that were pleasurable, because as moms, our busy schedule may not allow it. And I just want to encourage you to think about what are ways that you can incorporate pleasure and self-care into your routine. Maybe it's listening to music, or taking some time to read or journal or watch a favorite show. Having that in addition to eating and nourishing yourself well can again really help take food off the pedestal, so that binge eating is not something that you're falling into every night out of desperation or out of need for escaping, or just simply to catch up on the things that you haven't been eating throughout the day. And again, if this is something that you're struggling with, I just want you to know you're not alone. I'd love for you to check out my guide below, Break Free from Binge Eating, with more tips and strategies to help you through this. Especially as a mom, I know that you just want to have a healthy relationship with food. You want to be able to emulate behaviors around food that you would be proud of your children replicating. And so I just want you to be encouraged. This is something that can absolutely be reversed, and know that you are doing an amazing job as a mom for yourself and for your kids. It's not easy to take care of ourselves and our children, and it is possible to strengthen and rebuild a more positive relationship with food, to establish that healthy foundation in your home. So check out this guide, and be sure to check out my next video. Are your kids picking up on your disordered eating? I'll see you in the next one.